Hi, I'm Sonia Grover, and I've been working with animals for about 10-15 years in different formats, and I actually work on a one-to-one basis with private consultations and also with a couple of animal charities. Predominantly the work I do has been of a healing nature as opposed to a behavioural nature, but the healing often covers behavioural aspects. One of the things that I've found particularly effective is the use of sound. I have actually studied the use of sound with humans and how different sounds can help people, and so on that aspect I am a qualified sound healer. I was very interested in the effect that sounds have on animals and specifically dogs. I'm sure you've all seen how the most calm or placid dog that you may have had, there may be certain sounds that it just reacts to. Sometimes you may know why that is, because you may know the background where your dog's come from, or it had a traumatic experience with a particular sound and association of that sound. And there are things that you can do from behavioural aspects, and you'll find some of that on the website here, videos that help with changing reactions that can be triggered by certain sounds. But I wanted to talk about how you can use sounds to bring a different state of emotion into your dog. Now I'm using that specifically because it might be on some occasions that you may want to lift your dog's energy. So if your dog has got lethargic or depressed for whatever reason, you can use the use of sound for that, but also the use of sound to calm your dog in stressful situations. And an example of that could be separation anxiety. Most of the evidence that I've seen is anecdotal. There have been some studies and a number of CDs where they've studied the effects of certain tones and certain pitches and certain instruments that seem to reduce the anxiety level in all different types of animals. What they've found is, probably as you would expect, the more calming type of music, so it might be sounds of nature, or the calmer classical music, is very effective in calming dogs. And I would say on the sounds of nature, you need to be mindful if you've got the sounds like birds or even whale sounds, just be mindful that if there are sounds that you know that your dog or other dogs react to, might be better not to have them. Another one, and this again will be specific to each dog, but if you've got the sound of water or the sound of the sea, which to us can be very soothing, if your dog normally goes jumping in the river or jumping in the sea, it could actually have the opposite effect. So a lot of this is going to be unique to your dog, but just as a general rule, it's quiet, soothing, melodic, classical type music. However, it may be that you want to desensitize your dog to certain sounds. So a lot of people do leave a radio on or even a TV on, so there's everyday sounds within the house. And it is something that a lot of behaviourists recommend, that if the house is very, very quiet and the dog is timid, to perhaps have different sounds so the dog will, or dogs will, get used to the different sounds. The softer sounds can be found on things like Classic FM. However, if that's going to be left on for a long time, sometimes the classical music that's played on that station can actually be quite livening rather than calming. I have found that when you get a number of dogs, such as at an animal sanctuary where they're being rehomed and they will be in an elevated level of stress, or at a boarding kennels, it can be very helpful just to have everyday radio on. It might be something like Radio 2 or Radio 3, certainly during the day, not all the time, because then when there's no humans around and it's quiet in the evenings, it allows all of the dogs or the other animals to just be peaceful and just become in a calm state, as they would be if they were in their normal homes. So very good to have the radio on there. The TV can be quite good, but don't forget that dogs are multi-sensory. they will be stimulated not just by the sound but also by the visual. If the dog is exposed to that for a long period of time, it can actually have the opposite effect of what you're trying to do. On a day-to-day basis, one of the things you can look out for and start to notice is if there are certain sounds that the dog reacts to. Now, the obvious one is going to be the postman or somebody knocking at the door, but I'm just talking about other sounds. So one of the ones that you can probably all relate to is if they're doing drilling in the road, you know, that just grates on us. But what we have to remember is that dogs have a much higher auditory sense. So there might be sounds that are not bothering us, but actually are really disturbing to the dog. So again, just to notice that, and just by taking more notice of what your dog's doing. So if you're noticing that your dog is becoming stressful during the day and there's nothing different that you're doing, just listen and see if there's a certain sound in the background that you'd not noticed before. Might be a helicopter that's not bothering you. You might find out that the neighbours have put in this high-pitched sound to deter cats. Some of those reactions might be natural dog instincts. So there might be sounds even of certain birds or of other dogs that they're having a natural reaction to. But it might be that it puts them in an elevated level of stress because they want to go out and play or fight or eat the bird or something. So it's these type of things you can look out for, and then if you notice that and can see that association, you can look to do something about that. Sometimes you can take these sounds away, but if they're not in your control, it might be that you need to look at supporting, if it's for a short period of time, if it's roadworks for example, supporting something in the environment, whether that be through sound or something else that will just help the dog during that period. Again, this is where you can use sounds that you can have on during the day. So it could be a CD that's on repeat, so the dog can be out of that elevated level of stress, even if it's an excited level. Because if that happens all through the day, then you're going to get a very stressed out dog. So just some ideas of how you can listen out for sounds. So you might be wondering if there are certain instruments that have an effect on the animals in a negative way or in a positive way. So really it would probably be things that you already know. So anything with a very high pitched or squeaky tone. So things like singing bowls, which a lot of people use and Buddhists use in meditation, can really affect the auditory senses of the dogs. Certain pitches of them might be okay, but I would say best to steer clear of those. Things like very soft piano or very soft violin, but not with the loud, I want to say squeaky. And again, drums, if it's a slow rhythmic drum beat, and often they say if it's a rhythmic drum beat in line with the heartbeat, because then it's got this resonance, but not fast drums, you know, not loud heavy metal music, trumpets, trombones, unless they are very, very gentle and very, very quiet. So hopefully that's given you some idea of how you can, and excuse the pun, tune in to sounds that can help your dog, whether it is that you want to stimulate, or most of the time I think it's going to be to de-stress and to calm. But you can experiment perhaps with the different radio channels, with certain TV programs, and if you play instruments, experiment with the instruments that you play, because your dog will soon react if it is not something that is calming them. So good luck and happy listening.